What is up, Insaners, and welcome to the first game week deadline stream, guys. We are back with FPL. The FPL season is back, and this is the first stream of the season, guys. Really excited. I know it's been a long time since the game kind of launched, and we've been kind of tinkering with our drafts, tinkering with our teams, and doing a lot of crazy stuff. But I think the moment of truth is finally here. The deadline is very close, and I think it's going to be a really good season. And first of all, how are you guys doing? And I'm really excited, super excited regarding the whole season, how different teams are going to perform, their different transfer windows, etc., that are happening, different signings that have happened so far in the window. So I think it's going to be a great spectacle. Hopefully, it's not interrupted, this time. And FPL also, is going to be a lot of fun. Now, we generally do these streams and we generally do a lot of content. I'll kind of cover that in a bit. But guys, if you're new around here, make sure you like the stream. We'll be doing a lot of questions. We'll be taking up a lot of questions that you guys have. It can be anything regarding transfers. It can be anything regarding captaincy picks, whether, what kind of player to pick and how to come to that decision, whether you want to plan your future transfers as well. So we'll kind of cover all of those things. I think it's going to be a great episode. And I think we're about an hour and a half, about 90 minutes into the deadline. So I think we can cover a lot of good stuff. But before that, guys, make sure you hit the like button. If you're new around here, you can also subscribe to the channel. We are doing a lot of content this year, a lot of fantasy content. And I think it's going to be a great journey. We are like planning a lot of good stuff on the channel as well. We have an Instagram channel as well. And I think if you are following us, you would have seen a lot of movement today. And I think that's just one of the days. Of course, we'll be doing content across the whole time, and there'll be a lot of new stuff. You can also join the league as well. We have a mini league that we are running, and there are some great prizes, etc., to be won as well. You'll see the league code on the top of your screen as well, so you can join that. There are a lot of members already. There are a lot of players already playing in that league, and I think it's going to be really competitive, right? So the way or the structure, I'll just kind of tell you the structure of this particular stream and what we do, on deadline streams. We generally take up questions. We generally try to cover different topics, through different questions that you guys have. So whether it's anything related to FPL, related to lineups, related to any injury news, etc., if you want to know about, I think we'll cover all of those details. You can please feel free to ask any questions that you want to, and that way we'll also be able to cover a lot of different topics, right? So I have some things in mind myself. I'll kind of cover those as and when we go into the stream, but I think we'll start taking up questions, and feel free to ask anything you want, right? Because it's football at the end of the day. We all love the game, and I think it'll be really nice to kind of interact about football. So we'll take up the first question here. I think Devna, hi, how are you? And it's been a long time since we guys spoke. I think I've not really done a lot of streams as well during the preseason. So I think welcome to the stream and welcome to the season. I hope you are ready and raring to go for the new season as well. I think so. We'll take up the first one. The first question that you are asking, or the question that you have here is, who should I go for in terms of Madison or Barnes, right? So I think this is a very interesting topic and an interesting conversation to kind of have in terms of which Leicester players to go for. I know Madison is a kind of favorite for a lot of managers who've been playing this game for a long time. But I think Barnes has been, the pick or the standout pick in the last season, specifically in the last season. I think the range and the price that he kind of comes at, it's pretty attractive, and he's done okay. He obviously had a long injury last season where he was out for a very long time, and you don't really know what kind of shape the player is in, if he's fit, if he's really going to start, how is he going to perform. But I think whatever little that we saw of Barnes, I think he's done pretty okay. He was pretty good in the Community Shield game against City. Of course, City was not really playing a full strength squad, so things could have been different if the squad depth or the squad difficulty or the squad uh, overall squad would have been probably first team. But I think overall he's done pretty okay. There's a slight worry in terms of his injury that he might not start, or if he starts, he might not play the entire game. So that's a slight risk that you take for this particular week. But I think in general, he's a pretty good pick to have. He's in a very good price range. So 7 million, I think he's 7 million in the game. So, you can adjust a lot. You can chop and change a lot in that category. You have some options as well. So in case if you do not get the output from Barnes, I think you can go for somebody else as well. So that is the flexibility that somebody like a Harvey Barnes obviously gives. Madison and him are the same price, but I think Barnes is the one to go for. Look at the slightly longer picture here. Don't just look at the game week one and think that he might not start, and I'm having a player who might not play full 90 minutes. In general, I think his fitness is going to improve. He's going to be a crucial player. So I think sticking with Harvey Barnes is the one to go for here. Raza, thank you so much. Really, really thank you, and really thankful to you guys that have been helping me throughout growing the channel. I know we've grown leaps and bounds, and it's a new season, so there are a lot of things that are expected, and I hope I'll be able to deliver all of those to you. So thank you so much for your support, and I know you've been continuously supporting the channel as well. Uh, so in general, I think you were also speaking about your YouTube channel. So yeah, so I think Twitter handle is working pretty well, in fact, from an FPL perspective, because there are a lot of YouTubers on sorry, there are a lot of FPL folks on Twitter, right? So they write a lot of threads, they share a lot of information. I think the Twitter community of FPL is pretty strong, right? So you have the likes of Big Man, you have the likes of Late Riser from India. If you follow a couple more people, you also have Utkarsh, Zofar. So we have Indians as well there. Plus, there are a lot of people who are doing a lot of content on Twitter across the world. So I think it's a good platform to share your ideas. Of course, I won't really derail Twitter in any way. I think making YouTube videos obviously has its own set of challenges. You have to get some sort of an equipment, then you have to devote a particular amount of time to it as well. So I think keeping those challenges apart, I think Twitter is a good place to start. Of course, if you feel that you really want to reach the YouTube community as well, you can also have a channel, because I'm telling you, the people following FPL on YouTube are massive, right? You have the likes of Andy, you have the likes of Dan, who've been doing really well and who've grown really well. Plus, there are a couple of new YouTubers as well, who are coming up and who are doing pretty well. So I think it's a good space. I'm sure a lot of Indian YouTubers also might come up, in the coming time, because I think it's a growing community in India as well. You see a lot of people, taking more interest in FPL as a whole. So I think generally it's gonna be a good. I get a good vibe from FPL in India specifically. Devna, my thoughts on Sancho over Fernandes. I think I would probably go for Fernandes, and I know I'm not really saying anything new here. Fernandes is the safer option. Let me tell you. Yes, of course, he's the safer option. There's a lot of FOMO, going around Fernandes, that what if you don't have him and he starts scoring, goals, and starts giving other people a lot of points, right? So there's that fear that you might miss out on a lot of attacking hauls if you don't have Fernandes. Sancho, of course, gets a little gives United a different edge in terms of their attacking potential. Obviously, I personally feel that their attacking threat is probably going to be shared between Fernandes and Sancho. Of course, you have the likes of Greenwood, you have the likes of Rashford, then you obviously have Cavani or Martial up top, who can also contribute in terms of attacking returns. But I think in general, it's looking that way, that it's going to be shared. Of course, Sancho is a good player. He's proved himself in the Bundesliga, but again, Premier League is a very different ball game, right? So you never know what happens in the Premier League. We've seen a couple of players like Havertz and Werner as well, who've kind of struggled in the Premier League and struggled to adapt from the Bundesliga. So I think that is something that we need to keep an eye out. But I think Sancho as a whole would do pretty well, and he might not be on penalties. I think Bruno's the one who's going to be on penalties. He could take some set pieces. I think he could take some set pieces. He could be on some free kicks, etc. You also have Shaw, so there is that element of sharing those set pieces as well. So I think overall he's going to be a good player for United. In terms of FPL, I think it's a wait and watch for me. Ole said that he might start, or he might not start, but he might feature in this game. You never know, because Ole is generally known for starting up with new signings a lot of times, right? He's done that with Maguire. He did that with Bruno Fernandes as well. So there is a slight chance that he might start this game. But I think in general, I would probably wait for a couple of weeks. I really want to see how Sancho and the likes of Greenwood kind of shape up the United attack, because right now obviously Rashford is injured. You're not really sure in terms of how many minutes are you going to get from Martial as well. And of course, Cavani's joined the squad late, so I think that's also an issue. But in general, I think he's going to be a good asset. He can also be a good downgrade from Bruno, right? So in case if you are looking to get the likes of Son or probably even Lukaku, right? Lukaku in game week 7, I think he has brilliant fixtures and he has a decent run, which where you can actually get him. So in case if you are looking to get that strategy, or probably just going wild and getting Kane, right? Like I don't know who's gonna get Kane right now, but in case if you get Kane, those kind of moves is possible by downgrading a Bruno to Sancho. So from that perspective, I think it's pretty exciting and it's pretty interesting as well. But I think for me, or in general, I would say that wait for a couple of weeks in terms of Sancho, and see how he kind of gels into the team, and then you can probably take that call whether to do a Bruno from a Bruno to a Sancho, or probably just get in Sancho directly, right? Turbo high, and I don't think so. Cavani is going to start. I think he joined the squad pretty late, and he's not really had a lot of training, or probably not much training at all, right? So I personally don't think so. Cavani is going to start this one. In general, I think Cavani might start more games than what he did last season, right? Because Martial was also injured. He was pretty out of form at different intervals as well. I think I'm also interested to see that kind of combination between Martial and Cavani, because I generally have a feeling that they might share minutes, right? I don't think so. Greenwood probably is gonna go up top and play up top, because Ole doesn't really like him playing as a number nine. He generally tries to play him on the right, maybe even on the left, in different scenarios. But I think right is generally where his position is. So in general, I think Cavani is not going to start this one. He might be an option, but again, that injury scare that he has, right? He gets injured a lot, and in general, I think it's tricky. Like it's pretty frustrating to own such players, right? When, like, I know a lot of people are going haywire and crazy over Ings, over the likes of Antonio as well. I know they're good options, but let's say if they get injured, I think it's going to be really crazy, and the Twitter community or the FPL community in general is going to go haywire, and they might do a lot of transfers and movements all across the pitch. So I think Cavani probably might not start this one. Could get a few starts once he's kind of gain that fitness. John, hi, and thanks for the question. You're saying DCL or Vardy? I think so. There were a few question marks on DCL's fitness, and now that has kind of reduced. So he's definitely playing, or he's definitely fit. As this is what Benitez said in his press comments, that he is okay to start. Now, if he starts or not, again, we can all predict and we can all speculate, but at the end of the day, it's the manager's call, right? And he might think that probably DCL is not fit enough to start the game. He might just kind of come on as an impact sub, again, depending on how the game is going. But I generally think that he might start. There are not. I think Everton is one of the clubs who's kind of facing a lot of issues in terms of COVID as well, right? So there are some reports that there are about 4 to 5 players who are missing due to COVID, and I think James Rodriguez is one of them. So going through all of that speculation, I think probably DCL is not involved in that kind of from that kind of an angle. But in general, I think he's going to start this one. I think he's kind of recovered from the knock that he had, and so he's starting now. When you compare him with Vardy, of course, there's a huge price difference, right? In general, I think Leicester is going to start up top with Vardy. Now, there is a good chance that, he might start alone, or he might play just up front without the likes of Iheanacho. I know we saw, Iheanacho a lot of times last season where they were kind of playing, two strikers up top, and Vardy was making, kind of sitting back, and Iheanacho was making a lot of runs and, getting those goals, etc. But I think this time, with the presence of Daka, I think the situation kind of changes. I don't think so. Iheanacho is going to start. So I think that is a favor in terms of Vardy, and a point in terms of Vardy that he will get some minutes. The fixtures are okay. The fixtures are not that tricky, but I know I'm not really sure about Vardy, because the kind of attacking numbers that he showed last season, and especially at the end, right? From mid to end, I would say I don't think so. They were very promising. And that kind of takes me away from that Vardy pick. There's one upside to this move. In case if you want to do Vardy, he's a good template, or he's a good pick in terms of moving to somebody like a Kane or even a Lukaku later on. Let's take Kane out of the picture right now. Let's say if you want to go to Lukaku, I think from game week 7 their fixtures are pretty good. So if you really want to play the likes of Vardy, you can probably play him for the first 6 weeks, but then you in game week 7 you kind of push towards Lukaku, and by getting that additional 1 million from somewhere across the pitch. It could be across a midfield, it could be in defense, again depending on, there are a lot of variables involved at that time, right? You would have had 5 to 6 weeks, and then you would also probably get some players injured. There'll be an international break as well, so I think a lot of things are going to change at that time. But I think overall, it's a I would probably avoid both, and I probably know that you probably won't want to listen to this kind of a solution. But I think in general I would avoid both. But in case if I really have to select one, I probably would go with DCL. I think that DCL Luka Dini combination that a lot of people were talking about. I think if they can get a couple of players back, and if they don't have that COVID outbreak of sorts in the club, I think that combination could still tick. To be very honest, I know they've not had the smoothest of preseason games and friendlies, but I think in general. I really rate DCL, and I think let's say if he scores a couple of goals, I think we can see a train of managers and people going towards DCL. So I would prefer DCL out of the two, but in case if I have an option, I would probably not select any of them. Um, yeah. So Yeet, between 1 to 3. Okay, I hope I got that name right. How do you get to Lukaku in your draft? Interesting. So that's one thing that I've kind of thought about a lot in terms of, let's say if I really want to go to Lukaku, how will I kind of move towards that? Now there is a element involved here, which is the first wildcard, right? Again, I'm pretty sure a lot of people may not be thinking of what to do with the wildcard and when to use that particular wildcard. But I think in general, you kind of should have an idea in terms of when you can use the wildcard. Of course, there are different options and there are different times that when you can use it. There'll be this international break after game week 3, and I think you can get a few injuries, you might be lagging behind, etc. So you might play that wild card. So now when I play that wild card, right, I think that is when the whole situation changes. I really don't have to plan a lot. I can directly kind of get Lukaku probably around game week 6 or even 7. And I would probably go till game week 7. I will try to hold my wild card till game week 7 if possible. If my squad is in a really bad shape, then it's a different thing altogether. But I think in general, I would hold my wildcard till game week 7. And I think wildcard is one of the easiest ways to kind of get Lukaku in. Now, in case if that option is not there, right? For some reason, let's assume that we don't have that wildcard option with us. Then probably, I would I'll have to downgrade one of Salah or Fernandes, right? Or probably I'll start downgrading Trent, start getting a cheaper defender, and then start investing that extra money, from somewhere else. I think yeah, Trent could have been an option, but I think I'll have to downgrade a Trent to probably a 4 to 4.5 million defender, right? And I don't really see that to be an optimal strategy. I think depending on how United are playing, depending on how Fernandes turns up for the season, if he's showing that form, at least in terms of attacking returns, let's take aside the underlying stats here, but if he's not really getting a lot of returns and Sancho's probably doing well or doing better, I might switch to Sancho and then start taking out funds from a couple of picks as well. So there's Gundogan as well, who's 7.5. So I can downgrade him to probably a 6 million or a 6.5 million and get that one additional, million, and then try to take that to Lukaku. So that is definitely one option. Of course, the option of getting that wild card and replacing or getting Lukaku is definitely there. So that's also an option. So there are a couple of ways to get him in. And depending on what my squad balance is and what my situation is, I think I'll take that call. Yeah. Brian, hi, mate. I would. So your question is, would you go for a 7.5 million midfielder and play Ben White from game week 4 to 6, or go for Barnes and play and have the option of playing Ayling over White during game week 4 to 6? And I'll probably read that again. So you're saying, would you go for a 7.5 million midfielder? Okay, which probably I have done. So I have Gundogan here, and play Ben White from game week. I think I can play Ben White from game week 4 to 6. Again, it's so you're saying basically play Ben White or probably play Ayling, right? Or get a Barnes, for example. So I think I probably would I think the second option looks a lot better. In general, I think Barnes could be a good move. Slightly for the longer, I won't really say a longer run, but for at least a set of games, I think Barnes could be a decent move. Plus, I think I generally like the look of Luke Ayling over White, because I know there's a lot of hue and cry and a lot of rush about White that obviously he's a very expensive defender, and he's joined us and he's probably gone to a better club who might start keeping clean sheets. Again, all of these are assumptions right now, right? So we really don't know what's gonna happen. But I think in general, White won't really give you any kind of a goal threat. He's not really a threat from set pieces as well, right? So we had the likes of Lewis Dunk, who was one of the major threats from set pieces for Brighton. So I don't think so Ben White was in that category at all, right? So in general, I think I would prefer Ayling and probably having Barnes and playing Barnes and that combination from that particular, for game weeks 4 to 6. I think that looks like a better strategy. Again, it depends what kind of 7.5 million, midfielder we're talking about. Whether we're talking about Gundogan, whether we're talking about somebody else, probably Mason Mount as well, right? Mason Mount from game week 7. Now, of course, that doesn't really fall into your window, but from game week 7, he could also be a decent option, right? So, but I think the second option looks a lot better. Sean, hi. Thanks for the question. You're saying Weltman and Toney or Cancelo, Jota and Richarlison. I think I will go with the first option clearly. I like Cancelo. He's very versatile and he's played in a lot of different positions as well. He could give you some decent points whenever he's playing across the pitch or probably getting into different positions, into attacking positions. He's delivering a lot of good crosses. Of course, the bonus point potential also increases, right? So that is also something that we need to kind of take into consideration. But I think with Jota and Richarlison, I'm not really comfortable. I really don't know. So again, you might have a different opinion. I think if you ask somebody else, they might have a different say in this altogether, right? But I think in general, I don't really see Jota starting a lot of games. There could be a chance that he probably starts the first couple of games, but I think in general, Firmino is the one who's gonna start. I generally don't think that Klopp is gonna play all four of them together, because whenever he has played all four, I think the midfield becomes very open, right? And considering that Liverpool probably didn't have a great defense last season, I think they were really struggling. So probably that could change this season. But I think in general, I'm not really trusting Jota a lot. In case if he gets a few starts, if he probably starts playing 90 minutes, or not even 90 minutes, if he starts getting games under his belt and he's probably playing 70-75 minutes and he's doing well, right? Then I think the conversation might be a little different. But I think in general, I would say that I would probably not get the second combination. I think Weltman and Toney are decent. Brighton have a decent defense. I think the underlying stats in terms of defensive numbers were pretty good. And Toney is a risk. Yeah, I can get that Toney is probably a slight risk of whatever we've seen in the championship, or whatever threads or whatever people would have told you, or whatever I am probably telling you right now. There's a lot of championship bias, right? So you don't have a lot of data, of course, for this season, but you have a lot of these championship statistics that people are following, that he scored a lot of goals, he also gave a lot of assists as well. But in general, what I've seen and what I've felt, that most of their play, most of Brentford's play, right, that goes through Toney. And I think that is one of the main considerations for considering him in your team. I have of course not considered him, and I have my own reasons. But in general, I think if you are looking at a Brentford player, and if you are looking at them for a stretch, or for a run at least, I think Toney could be a decent option, especially if you're playing safe, right? Because I think his ownership is, I'm not really sure how much it is, but I think it has to be more than 30%, right? And that's a lot in terms of FPL. So if you are playing safe, I think that first option looks a lot better. Uh, Brian, you're saying basically Barnes means that I have the rotation pair in. Yeah, so I think that's probably the right way to go here. Have Barnes, and and again, like, depending on what kind of other moves you're saying, or you're doing, you can kind of adjust your lineup. Ahmed, hi, and thanks for the question. You're saying Ings or Antonio. I think it's a tricky one. Both are injury prone, right? For those people who have followed football for some time, or who have been playing FPL for some time, I think they would really have those regretful moments where they've had these two in their team at some point of time, maybe, and they've got injured, right? They are very good players. Like, I'm not denying the fact that they're not good players, but I think in general, I feel that Ings probably is a short-term solution. Let's say if you're looking at the first 3 weeks, right? Ings probably has better set of fixtures. Now you have the likes of Bundia as well. You have the likes of Watkins as well. They're kind of back, and we've kind of got an inkling that they would be okay to start. So I think that really makes Ings a very good short-term option. Again, he has the pedigree to score against the bigger teams as well, right? We've seen that he can score against the bigger teams. So in general, I think over the season, I feel Ings could be the better option, because Antonio would also have Europa League to kind of fit into. And if West Ham don't sign a striker, right, I really don't see Antonio getting majority of the minutes, because he, at some point, I'm pretty sure he's bound to get injured, right? And we're just waiting for that. So I think overall, throughout the season, I know Ings is also injury prone. It's a tricky call. I think overall, Ings would be the better pick. Considering that Antonio, his minutes could be shared, West Ham might sign a new striker, somebody else, the likes of Benrahma, the likes of Bowen, might play a false nine or might play in Antonio's position as well. So, considering all of that, I think Ings would be the better move. In the short term, if you're looking, let's say if you are looking at fixtures and if you feel that those fixtures are pretty tough and Ings might not do well, then probably Antonio. But over the season, I think Ings is going to be the better pick. Who's the best Arsenal option according to you? Turbo, I think. So I'm really excited with the fact that we might see Bukayo Saka and we might see Emil Smith Rowe getting a lot of minutes this season, right? So I think that is one thing that is really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think from preseason, what I've seen that Pepe is also doing pretty well, and he could be another one that who could blow up on the scene, on the FPL scene, on or on the football scene for Arsenal as well, right? Because there is a high chance that he starts ahead of Willian. I don't think so. Willian is a starter for Arsenal in any capacity. I think Pepe has a lot of years, in him. He's a good player. He's of course there have been a lot of issues with him, and Arsenal as a club are really struggling right now, or have struggled in the past few years. But I think in general, Pepe could do really well. His price is a bit tricky for me. I think he's 7.5, right? So I think that is a bit trickier. In general, I think Emil Smith Rowe is the one that really excites me. If he can play a number 10 role, right, for Arsenal, and if he can get those minutes, because one thing we have to keep in mind that they don't have European football, and I think that's going to be massive. That's really going to be massive for them. I think they can do really well if they can really get their act together. They've not really signed a lot of players, so I'm not sure what's happening there. I think in general, Emil Smith Rowe, if he gets minutes, he signed a new contract. Of course, he's in Arsenal's long-term plans as well, right? If he gets those minutes and if he plays at at the number 10 position, I think he's going to be one to look out for sure. Chilwell or Diaz? Finn, thanks for the question. I think I would go for Diaz for sure. I think he's more. I would not say he's more nailed. Yes, he's the most nailed City defender, if you want to put it that way. But I think in general, Diaz has better fixtures. He's probably again, I really can't say that he's playing for a better defense, because Chelsea's defense under Tuchel has been magnificent, right? We've all seen their defensive improvements and the kind of stuff that they've done defensively under Tuchel. So in general, I think if you ask me generally, it would be a tricky decision. But right now, if you want to start with one defender, I think for game week 1, Diaz is the one to go for. I think Chilwell might start this one, but then you have a set of fixtures which are pretty tricky, and you have better fixtures or better players to kind of go for in that price category, and that price is really a premium price for a defender that you're paying, right? So probably you can switch him in game week 7 when Chelsea's fixtures kind of get easy, and they have one of the best fixtures in fact across the FPL, across all the teams. So I think that is when you can target Chilwell. But I think overall, when you want to start the season from game week 1, I think Diaz would be the better pick. Turbo, you're saying, do you think Iwobi might be a good Everton option now that James is injured? Again, I'm not really very bullish or very fond of a lot of Everton options. I think there's a lot there's a lot of inconsistency when you talk about Everton as a whole, right? Even under Ancelotti, they started the season brilliantly, in fact, and they kind of fell away, and then he left as well. Now the whole situation, Benitez has come. There's a lot of speculation in terms of how is he gonna play. Benitez, we know that he's a defensively sound manager, right? So there's a lot of focus on defending that Everton would be doing. But again, in general, what kind of system he plays, whether he plays a wing back system, whether he goes for a back four, depending on that, it's a tricky call. I don't think so. It will be right now. I'm not really getting that vibe. In case again, if let's say if James is infected with COVID, I think it's at least 3 to 4 weeks. I don't, considering how James is in terms of his fitness, I don't really see him coming into the scene for another couple of weeks, minimum of a couple of weeks. Could definitely be more than that as well. But I still don't feel Iwobi would be the one. I'm not really sure of Iwobi as a pick overall. Ravi, you think Jota versus Greenwood for the next 6 game weeks, Jota will be on the winner? Again, it's different people will have different opinion, to be very honest. I probably disagree here, and I kind of agree with what you're saying in terms of the stats, right? He definitely dominates all the major stats like XG, XA, shots in the box per 90. Of course, he's getting lesser minutes, right? So if you spread that across, let's say if he gets consistent minutes, that picture might be very different, right? Those stats might come down again. They can improve as well, so it can go either way. But I think in general, in term if he gets those starts right, like I think he would definitely be better than Greenwood. I think the major concern for me in terms of Jota is that he might not start those games. Yes, you could also make an argument that he's an impact sub, right? He can also come from the bench and he can get you points as well. So that is also an outlet in terms of Jota's Arsenal, right? So but again, overall, I feel I would probably want to go for a slightly more, confirmed sort of a pick. Again, I'm not saying that Greenwood is a sure starter, especially when the likes of, Cavani, when the likes of Rashford, etc. return. I think Rashford is a lot later. I think in general, Greenwood might start more games than Jota, and I think that's where that whole conversation swings for me, right? And that's why don't have Jota in my team. I have Greenwood in my team. Uh, but I think if Jota can get those minutes, whether it's with Firmino, whether it's instead of Firmino, I don't think so. He's going to replace Mane, because I think Mane is again he's a different player, and he's probably a more important player. Again, I'm not saying Firmino is not important, but I think the way they play, I think Mane is required in that team, right? And probably Jota can switch with Firmino. So if that those minutes are fine, right, then I think Jota would be the one. But right now, from seeing whatever I've seen in preseason, or from whatever I've been reading, or at least for whatever I have in my mind, right, I think Greenwood would be the better one to go for. Thoughts on a double Brighton defense? I think Brighton's defensive numbers, as I just mentioned, they were pretty good last season. Now, a lot of people are going for a double up. I think initially I also had a double. I think I had Lamptey. Yeah, I think I had Lamptey before he. There was news that he is not fit to start the season. I had Lamptey and Sanchez, as a kind of a cheap or a budget double up. So I think again, it depends on how much you trust that Brighton defense, right? Whether you really trust them to keep a clean sheet in most games that they're playing. Again, the fixtures are there. I won't say the fixtures are not. They're not that easy, but they're not that tricky as well. So there is a chance that you can get some clean sheets as well. Plus, when you have the likes of Weltman, or probably you have the likes of Dunk as well, there's a slight chance that you can get those bonus points. You can get Dunk's headed goal as well. So there's attacking threat there as well. So depending on who you pick, I think that could be a decent option. I think a lot of people would be going for the likes of Sanchez and Weltman. I think I know Weltman is not highly owned as a whole, but I think in general I've seen a lot of people going for that double up, and I think that could be a decent one. So yeah, going for a double in terms of Brighton, I think it's not a bad call. We'll take up the next one. Is Toney a decent pick? Zora, thanks for the question. I again, it's tricky. Like, I have not really. I've considered Toney, of course. I've considered him in my drafts, and I've considered him in my thinking, and how I've prepared my team. But it's a championship style side at the end of the day, right? I would probably wanna trust the teams that have been there in the Premier League, the players that have been there in the Premier League. Of course, I'm also going with a couple of risky picks. Let's say Benrahma could be a slightly risky pick, right, for a lot of people. But I think in general, I'm not 100% sure in terms of the new sides. And of course, we don't have a lot of options from the likes of Norwich and Watford. Brentford also probably have a couple of options in Buemo and Toney. But in general, what I've read and what I've kind of spoken to people about, a lot of them are very bullish about Toney. Of course, he's the highest owned. I think he's probably the highest owned forward in the game. But one thing is for sure, he's the best option in that price range, right? At that 6.5 price range, he's probably the one to go for. My whole dilemma, or my whole thinking is that whether I really value Toney in terms of getting me those consistent returns, or whether I would probably go for the likes of Rafinha or a Benrahma or a Barnes to do well, right? So that's the overall strategy. If you look at my team, it's either a 3-5-2, or let's say if I play a 3-4-3 with a Toney, for example, then I'll probably have a cheaper midfielder, right? So I generally feel that that fifth midfielder could be a really important. I think a lot of people are going for cheaper midfielders to kind of get the likes of Son, or probably even get the likes of a third striker, which I don't have in my team. But I think in general, Toney could hit it off. Of course, he could hit it off. Arsenal, in terms of their defense, have not really looked that great. Of course, Ben White has reached, but probably there's a lot of hype around how he's going to change the Arsenal defense. Pablo Mari is again, he's just crazy. Like, I really don't think so. He's any good at that centre back spot. So there's a good chance that they can get something from this game. again, and from the coming games as well. Depending on how that goes, probably I'll take that call. But in general, I'm comparing Toney to the likes of a similarly priced midfielder, and with that kind of comparison, I think there's a lot that we can choose from. There's a lot that can happen there, and I probably would not consider Toney right now because they're a championship side at the end of the day, right? I know that they're playing the first game in front of fans. Of course, they're fans in general also this season as well, and a lot could change. But I would really want to see them at least for a couple of weeks. I think that would be my strategy. See them for a couple of weeks. If he's really doing well and if he's just taken the world apart, I think that is when I probably get him in my team. Glenn, hi, and how are you doing? I hope you're ready with your team and your squad. Ahmed, Ings, or Antonio? Yeah, I think I've kind of covered that. Ings probably the better long-term pick. Antonio probably for the first 7 or 8 or probably even 10 fixtures. Ings, you might want to switch Ings to a different forward after game week 3, because that's where Aston Villa's fixtures kind of become tricky. And of course, Ings has the pedigree to do well, but I'm not really sure how Villa is going to shape up. Ben White or Simicast to start? I have Toney starting. So see, again, this is a very interesting. It's a good combination as well. I think it's a very interesting segue into the next part of the conversation that we can have, that whether Simicast is a good option, right? Because I know I have Simicast. I know a lot of people are going gaga over Simicast, that he's gonna play in Robertson's position and he's gonna really tear the world apart. I don't think so that's gonna happen. I still feel that he has the ability to do well, but I think in general, like Klopp can all surprise us, right? He can just play Milner there, and then we'll be like, oh my god, what the hell did we do? Because I've seen a lot of people, and probably even I was that at one point of time, where they've kind of revolved and changed their entire squad depending on Simicast, right? And that's pretty risky. I know Simicast as a pick is not risky. He's probably a transfer waiting to happen, because he's not going to play more than three. Worst case scenario, he's not going to play more than 3 to 4 weeks, right? Probably, the international break is when Robertson kind of gets into the frame again, and game week 4 is when he returns, right? So if you look at that from that perspective, I think you're getting a couple of weeks from Simicast. And anyways, I think game week 3 they have, I think they have Chelsea. So if I'll just check. I think they have Chelsea. So anyways, you won't be playing Simicast for that particular game, right? So I think in general, you only have him for a couple of weeks. So I would probably, I took the risk. I took that plunge because I was not really very bullish on Jota, and that was my thinking. But if you personally feel that Jota is probably going to give you better returns, he's probably going to start more, I think that's where you probably should shift. When you talk about Ben White or Simicast to start, right? I think, of course, both are going. I generally feel that both are going to start in terms of their respective matches. But now that you look at the fixture, of course, Liverpool are playing Norwich, who have been hit by COVID. There's a lot of uncertainty in terms of what's happening. They have had a pretty poor preseason as well. So I expect them to keep a clean sheet. I expect Liverpool to keep a clean sheet. We might see Van Dijk returning, and we all know what happens when Van Dijk comes back, right? So I think there's a clean sheet for the taking. There also could be an attacking return here as well. So I think if you really want to compare both in terms of who's going to do better, I generally feel that Simicast could do better. But again, be sure that Simicast is only an option for a couple of weeks. He's not beyond that. He probably would be a bench fodder for you, or you'll probably have, let's say, if you want to get Jota, or if you are struggling with a bench overall, then you might have to shift him out. So make sure that you keep that in mind. In general, I think Simicast is probably better for the first couple of games in general. Glenn, you're asking, should I spend more of my budget on the midfield or defense? Again, so in general, I think I personally don't like to spend a lot of money in my defense. Having said that, I still have Trent, right, who's the most expensive defender in the game. So, but in general, if you see my overall balance, I've kind of invested a little more in my midfield. I think I've generally gone for a strong midfield 5. And again, there's a good chance and there's a good scope of me chopping and changing a couple of options there. Of course, I can also play along with the premiums, but in general, I think I've invested more in midfield. I think it totally depends on you. As an FPL player, what I've seen in the past couple of seasons at least, I think investing more in midfield is beneficial, right? With attacking options like, let's say, like a Robertson or a Trent. Of course, they had like off seasons last season, But in general, they have attacking returns and they have attacking potential. But how much can you really depend on clean sheets, right? Because that is where your majority points are going to come from. So can you really depend on a team going out every week and getting majority of the clean sheets? Yes, Chelsea and City were pretty good, but if you really look at the number of clean sheets that they got, I think City had 19, if I'm not wrong. So that's an okay number, right? That's not really high, but when you look at the likes of, let's say, like a Rafinha, for example, or a Dallas. Again, Dallas was a defender, so that's probably a wrong example. But let's say like a cheaper midfielder who's really doing well, who has had a great season, and he's getting a lot of attacking returns as well. So I think in general, what I've seen, the midfield gives you a lot more, points in terms of your overall balance. So I would personally say that you should probably go for a heavily invested or a slightly more invested midfield than the defense. So I think that should be the optimal strategy. We'll take up the next one. Livramento, I think, yeah, Avish, thanks for the question. Really appreciate it. And I hope you're doing great. Um, I think Livramento, a lot of people are excited about it. I'm also looking forward to him, coming to Southampton and probably even starting. I don't think so it's going to happen from straight away. I don't think so, he's going to start from game week 1. But there's a good chance that, Southampton really tries and gives him some minutes, right? Because of course he's gone there for his development and to get more first team action as well. So there's a good chance that Livramento becomes an option a little later on. But right now, I think again depends on your overall strategy, right? If you're not going for the likes of Amarte, or if you're not going for the likes of Simicas, which I think a lot of people are, then I think Livramento is also a decent option to kind of just put in and just forget about him. There will be a time, I'm telling you, there will be a time where he will start getting some minutes and he will start getting some games. And I think that is when you generally go for him, and he could be a good option. He's a very cheap option, right? For 4 million, you're not really taking a lot of risk. So if you don't have the other 4 million defenders in your overall strategy, I think he's still a decent option to go for. Probably he's not going to start the first few games at least. That's what I think. Tiger and Gunnar, hi, and thanks for the question. Do you think Grealish is a good one to play? I think Grealish, of course, he's a great player. There's no denying that the fact that he's not a good player. What happens to him in City is also a bit debatable. Whether he's going to play as a number 8, whether he's going to play on the left. A lot of people think that he and there are a lot of options on the left. You have the likes of Sterling, you have the likes of Foden as well. So probably he might not play there. I know that Aston Villa kind of deployed him on the left majorly, but in general, I think he's going to play a little more central and a little more deeper. And I think that's where his position is going to be. But I genuinely feel that he could be a good option. And I personally feel that he could be a great option, a great pick overall from a Man City perspective. Because, and again, probably you'll hate me for this later, or you'll quote me for this later, but I genuinely feel that he would be one of the players who could get a lot of minutes this season. Right? I'm not saying he's nailed every week. We don't know. I've tried to play the pep roulette myself and I failed miserably. Right? I'll be shameless to accept that. I think most of us have. Right? So in general, I think he's gonna do well. Of course, there'll be a lot of rotation with City, and you really don't know what's gonna happen. But I think in general, he's gonna get minutes. He might even start game week 1, right? And I'm not crazy to think that. Like, there are chances. I've read a lot of streams. I've gone through a lot of streams. I've gone through a lot of Man City forums where people and fans are talking about him starting for game week 1, right? And there could be a chance. You don't have the likes of, you don't have the likes of Foden. You don't have the likes of KDB as well. So there's a good chance that he might, get some minutes with Gundogan and probably Rodri playing as a CDM, as in a deeper role, right? So that could be a midfield 3 for Man City. So there's a decent chance that that could happen. There's also a chance that Gundogan can probably play, as a false 9, and probably Bernardo Silva comes in that hole as well. But I think in general, Grealish is going to be a good option. You won't be crazy going for him in game week 1. I'm telling you this. A lot of people are saying Mahrez is probably a sure starter. Maybe he is. Maybe he's not. Again, we can all speculate at this point. Considering what we've seen in the preseason minutes, I think he starts game week 1. But I think Grealish overall could be, probably could be a set and forget option. Something on those lines for sure. We'll take up the next one now. Son, Veltman, and Toney or Cancelo. I think I've taken this. Sanchez over Martinez. Yes, of course. Sanchez over Martinez. You're saving $1 million. Martinez has tricky fixtures after game week 3. So, there's a chance that they don't get clean sheets at all, right? And you probably just depend on save points. I know he gave a lot of save points last season, but I'm not really sure if that's going to happen this season as well. So I think overall, you get Sanchez, you save that 1 million, and then you start looking where you can invest that 1 million. I think that's a better strategy in Sanchez over Martinez. I think it's a good option to go for. Simicas or Marty, who's the better to the first 11? I think I personally would say Simicas. I don't think so. Amati has any goal threat or has any attacking returns in him. Vestergaard is also signed. If you guys, I'm sure you guys are aware that Vestergaard has also signed for the club for Leicester. So he's moved from Southampton to Leicester. So there's a good chance that Vestergaard, again, some people are saying he might even start game week 1. Though I think that might be pushing it a little too much. I think he won't start game week 1, but he definitely can start game week 2. So you probably only have a Marty for game week 1 or for 1 week, and probably that's not enough, right? On the other hand, if you see Simicas, he might give you a couple of weeks. Again, that's not too much when you are looking at the overall picture, but he's more attacking, right? And Liverpool has decent fixtures, probably better fixtures than Leicester. They can get a clean sheet in both. They can probably even get attacking, and Simicas can get attacking returns in the first 2 games, right? Third is a bit tricky. Of course, Chelsea's is a different quality of a side altogether. I think in general, he could be a decent one to go for. And I think if I have to compare both, I think Simicas would be the one to go for. Yeah, so Salman, how about Rafinha, Son, and Toney instead of Gundogan, Greenwood, and Ings? Um, Again, I've kind of covered why I'm not really going for Toney, and I have my reservations of him. I know a lot of people are going with Toney, so I'm kind of going against the crowd here. But I think in general, I feel that the other option that I have is slightly better. So I'll tell you why, right? Rafinha, again, his underlying statistics were absolutely brilliant. He's definitely the best option to go for in that price range. Not denying that fact. I just feel that the couple of fixtures or the early set of fixtures are a bit tricky. Everton is looking probably a lot easier than probably what I was thinking earlier. But I think in general, I would probably wait till the Liverpool fixture and then probably get him. Let's say if Greenwood is not starting, or if I want to replace Gundogan, though I have a different plan for Gundogan altogether. But let's say if Ben Rama is not starting, I can get that flexibility and then probably get him. I really don't think that I probably would want to see Leeds as well, right? I know they've scored a lot of goals in preseason. They've not really kept clean sheets, but Rafinha is again nowhere concerned with that. In general, I feel Son as well. Again, preseason he's played a lot more central. He's been Tottenham's main focal point, and I think that could be really interesting, right? And the Kane situation, that is what bothers me. I don't know if it's bothering you or not, but it really bothers me. I really don't think I really don't know, to be very honest. Kane could leave, he could stay as well. He's not coming to training. All of that stuff is happening. Then they have this game against Man City, which is now a huge spectacle because, of course, Kane can play against his future employers as well. So that's a different angle altogether. But there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of what and where Son is going to play, right? Tottenham might sign a new striker if Kane leaves. They might not sign one. Son might shift to the left. He might play a more central role up top, and probably the likes of Dele Alli supporting him as a shadow striker. So all of these different permutations and combinations, right? And that is what makes me a little bit uncomfortable in terms of that particular combination. And that's why I've gone with the other set, right? Because I definitely considered Son as one of the options when I was building my team, and I think he's probably the only option which I'm a little scared of, to be very honest. Those fixtures from game week 2 to 4, I think they're pretty good, right? And you could get some decent returns from those games. But I think I would try to get a basic sense of how these different things are happening, how Rafinha is playing, how Son is playing, how Toney is kind of progressing, because these are really big question marks in my mind. And I think that's where my thinking is kind of gone, where I've not really gone for these options and probably the other options that I have in my team. We'll take up the next one. Johan, Everton poor performance against United preseason. Again, that's just one game, to be very honest, right? So you really can't judge Everton by one game. Of course, now they have that whole COVID scenario also kind of coming in, and it's getting a bit difficult to understand Everton, to be very honest. They are an inconsistent team. We've all seen that. So yeah, I'm not really sure. That's why I had Lucas Digne and I also had DCL in my draft. In my first draft, if you guys have seen my first draft, I had both players at that time. Right now, I'm not that comfortable. Again, like a lot of different teams, like a lot of different players, I want to see how Everton perform and how Everton play, and then kind of take that call. So I think Everton would be an avoid for personally for me. I think it will be an avoid. Holy cow! Okay, so your question is: do you think Martinelli is a good option as Laka and Oba and Nketiah are injured? I think, yeah, I think Martinelli could be the one who's starting. Again, for how long they're missing, if they have COVID, what are the protocols there, and probably they're missing for 2 to 3 weeks or probably even 4 weeks. I'm not really sure on that, but I think in general, I think Martinelli could become a good option. Again, it's probably a wait and watch for me there as well, because you have the likes of Saka, you have the likes of Emil Smith Rowe, you have even the likes of Pepe who might get more minutes this time around. So those would be better options in general, but I think I would, there's a good chance that Martinelli could be, a decent option. I really hoped and I really wanted him to be a good option last season as well, but I think that didn't happen. Of course, the injuries and he's not being fit, he's not being match fit, and all of that. Because of all of that, he's not really been able to progress in that direction or in the way that Arsenal would have liked. But I think this season could be a breakout for him. How many minutes will he get? Having the likes of Laka, because again, Laka and Oba will come back in the squad, right? And they're starters. They're mostly starters. Let's say if Oba plays on the left, if Saka is not playing there, there's a high chance that Laka plays as a striker, or probably Oba plays as a striker, and Laka is benched, and then Saka comes on the left, right? So there are these different combinations that they can try. So I'm not really sure how much Martinelli can, how much minutes can he get. But I think initially, at the start, there's a good chance that he can play some minutes. I won't say a lot of minutes, but probably some minutes. We'll take up the next one. Play MRT or Weltman. I think Weltman is a better pick, Tom. Thanks for the question. I think you would want to go for somebody. First of all, there's a price difference, right? MRT is 4 and Weltman is 4.5. So that's the first difference. Now, Weltman is probably playing for a better defense. There's a high chance that they can get clean sheets. They can keep clean sheets. Brighton is not really a player focused team. They are a more system dependent team, right? Even if a lot of people might think that White is leaving, or White is left, so their defense might become a little weak, and they also have a few injuries that they have to kind of tend to. But I think in general, I would definitely go for Weltman over MRT. I think MRT is not a sure starter. Of course, he can play a couple of weeks, but I think after that, I really don't think so. He's gonna start. So I would go for Weltman. Greenwood or Wilson, who is the better to include in the first 11? Sorry, Sanjay. I hope I got that right. I think in terms of both the options, right? I think Wilson is definitely, he has to start every game for Newcastle, right? There's no chance that he doesn't start games for Newcastle. I think you know. Greenwood, there's a slight risk in terms of his minutes being managed, or his minutes being rotated, not managed, to be very honest. But Wilson is Newcastle's talisman. I think he's gonna be there for Newcastle for most of the games, for majority of the minutes. Again, there's a slight chance that there's an injury scare with Wilson as well. He's another forward that gets injured a lot. So we have to keep that in mind, because if that happens, that you probably have to kind of get him out of your team. I think in general, Wilson looks like the better pick to me. Again, a lot of people might disagree to this, but I think in general, Wilson, out of the two, Wilson is more nailed. Newcastle is more dependent on Wilson as compared to United being dependent on Greenwood, right? United still has a lot of different attackers, like Sancho, like Fernandes, who can really do the business, can do the job for them. So I think Wilson would be the better pick, to be very honest, to include in your first 11. Do I think Tierney will start? Yeah, I think there's a chance that he starts. Again, can I really trust him with all the injuries and with how Arsenal's gonna perform? I'm not really sure. Willing to do that. I think he's 5 million if I'm not wrong, and there are options like Sufal, who's a lot better, and I'll be very honest, who's a lot better than the Arsenal defender there. I think with Tierney, we always expect him to do really well. He can get attacking returns. He's a good crosser of the ball as well. But in general, he gets injured a lot, right? And that's where I'm kind of turned off Tierney from an FPL perspective. So, but there's a good chance that he starts, but from an FPL perspective, I'm not really considering him. Miguel, where have you finished in FPL in the past years? So in fact, it's not been a very long time since I've started playing FPL. I think this is my 4th or the 5th year. So I'm not really, somebody who's playing it for a decade or a couple of decades. I'm not that old, to be honest. But yeah, I've kind of understood the game very nicely last season and the season before that as well. So last season was my best rank. I finished, I think, 16,000, 16, roughly around 16,000 in the world. And I think last season was when I really kind of, understood how different managers think, because we started this channel that time. I started speaking to a lot of people who were serious players, who were casual players. So I understood the vibe of FPL, right? In terms of how people think, what are they thinking, what kind of transfers are they making, what is the overall strategy in terms of chips, etc., because that is also very, very important. And what's their overall outlook in terms of FPL and in terms of football, right? So I think probably I would say my overall ranks have been pretty poor. In fact, the first few years I was, I think, around 400,000 or something like that. Last season it was 16k. I think the season before that it was somewhere around 1.5 lakhs. And I think that was one of the reasons, because kind of stopped playing in the middle as well. But in fact, at one point in time, I was in the top 10,000 in the world as well. So I think in the past 2 seasons is when I've really kind of come along and come ahead in terms of how I am progressing, what kind of moves I'm making. And it's also fun to talk about FPL, right? I'm not an FPL guru. There are a lot of people who've been doing this for decades. I'm not one of those. I really want to have a lot of fun. I want to make this game fun, right? Like, a lot of people take it seriously. There's no point, like, there's no harm in taking the game seriously, but I think you should have a lot of fun. Of course, you can spend a lot of time in FPL and thinking about a lot of stuff, but I think the game as a whole should be made a lot of fun. So yeah, last year was my best rank. It was 16,000 in the world. I was hoping that I could get into the top 10k, and that would have been crazy. But I think this is that year. I think this is that year where we really push on and at least target a top 10k finish. Even better if possible. So that would be awesome. Thanks for that. Euro tips. I really tried my best, in terms of Euros as well. I've been watching football for a long time, right? I've been watching football for almost a decade and a half. So you kind of understand, or you kind of get an understanding in terms of how the game happens, and how teams progress, how they play, what kind of formations, and all of those stuff. And plus, it's also a passion, right? So I've been following football since a long time. So I think that really kind of helps. Um, Miguel, I'm deciding between Rafinha, Barnes, and Madison. I think if you really have to rate those defenders, I think I would really, go for if you kind of remove the fixtures at one point, right? Let's not talk about. Let's assume that we're not really thinking of fixtures too much, because Rafinha then probably would be a second, for example, right? He's definitely not a third. But if I really have to rank these three different players, it would definitely be Rafinha, Barnes, and Madison. If you're looking at the first 3 or 4 fixtures, and if you feel that there's a chance that Rafinha might not do that well, though I still feel that he could get points. He's a very attacking player. He's also one of the main players from a creativity point of view when you talk about Leeds, right? And Leeds as a team, they score a lot of goals. I really don't think so they're gonna focus a lot on defense this year as well. I still feel it's gonna be all out attack. So considering that, I think there's I would still say Rafinha, Barnes, and Madison. Though I don't have Rafinha, but for different reasons, of course. But I think in general, Rafinha, Barnes, Madison would be the option. I don't really like Madison, to be very honest. I think he's a very frustrating pick from an FPL perspective. So I'll just probably just keep it to that. How to get Lukaku with both Salah and Bruno if he does good. I think I've kind of covered this, Johan, before as well, but I'll still just quickly cover it. You can get those. You can get Lukaku either by downgrading a Trent and probably upgrading somebody like an Ings. Of course, you will probably have to downgrade to somebody like a 4 or a 4.5 million defender. You could also do it in two moves where you downgrade, let's say, a Gundogan, or probably you down midfielder, and start making adjustments in defense as well. Uh, that might take an additional move, but you'll definitely have to upgrade one of Ings and Toney, or whosoever you have, right? Let's say if you have a mid-priced forward, so that is the one that will be going towards the likes of Lukaku, because I think you'll probably need about 3.5 million, and a lot of it can come from Trent. Of course, one way could also be downgrading a Fernandes to, let's say, of course, you don't want to do that, but Fernandes to Sancho could also be one option if Fernandes is not doing that great. But I think you'll have to kind of do it in 2 to 3 moves. Wildcard is probably the one time where you can actually do it. If you can really extend the wildcard to game week 7, I know it's a bit late, because by the time your squad might be in tatters, right? Mine too. I really don't know. But in general, I think I generally feel that that could be achieved very nicely with the wild card, especially with Chelsea's fixtures turning from game week 7. So that could be a really good option. We'll take up the next one. Yeah, Miguel, so basically you've given your whole team. Sanchez in defense, you have Trent, Shaw, Simicas. Midfield is Harrison, Salah, Gundogan, Bruno Fernandes, Barnes. I think it's a decent squad. Harrison is also not really spoken of a lot, but I think he could have another great season. Of course, he's signed full time for Leeds and he could have a decent season. I know majority of the people are going for Rafinha considering his underlying stats and all of that jazzy stuff. And he's of course a better looking player, right? If you look at the likes of Harrison, he'll quietly tick along. Somebody like a Mason Mount, right? A lot of people are focusing on Havertz and probably not Mount at this stage. I know Mount's ownership is probably higher than Havertz right now, but in general, Mount is also some sort of a player who won't give you 10, 15 points. He'll probably give you 6, 7 points for majority weeks and he'll probably get a good score as well. But I think overall Harrison is a good option to go for. I think he's a great differential from the likes of Rafinha. So I don't really see any fault. It's a good squad. Is Toney a must-have, Nigel? I don't think so. Toney is definitely not a must-have. If you're playing safe, right? If you're really worried about his ownership, there's a possibility that you can go with him. But again, he's 6.5 million, right? Like you can't really say that he's not having him as a risk. It's not like I have Fernandes and who can get 15, 20 points, or I have Salah who can really punish me. I generally don't feel that Toney is. I can't compare Toney to a Salah or a Fernandes, right? At least to start off. Let's see what happens. But I think to start off, I would not say that he's a must-have for sure. Um, I don't think so. I think it's fine. You probably, if you really want, you can. No, I don't think so. I'll make any changes. I think if you really want, you can go for Rafinha as a safer option and probably save 1.5 in the bank, and probably be flexible in terms of changing the likes of Gundogan or probably upgrading Barnes or probably even changing your forwards to somebody else maybe. But I think it's fine. You don't really have to make that change. Um, Broja or just a 4.5 million attacker for the bench. I think no, I think I will probably not go for him just right now. Again, don't know how they're gonna really gel in, right? There's a lot of new signings. There are a couple of players that have come in terms of attack there. So I don't really I it's difficult right now. I think I'll probably just go ahead with the 4.5 million attacker for the bench. Again, it also depends on what you're doing with that money, right? If you're not really doing anything with the money, if your overall squad balance is kind of okay, probably he's worth taking the risk. But I would definitely want to see him for a few weeks and kind of see how the minutes are shaping up for all those attackers, and then probably take that call. So I think I probably would just have a 4.5 million attacker on the bench. Chinmay, you're saying David De Gea. Okay, so you've also given your team here. David De Gea, Trent, Shaw, Sufal, Salah, Grealish, Sancho. Um, could start, could not start. Could probably get a few minutes. Probably the last 20, 30 minutes, maybe something like that. Suchek is somebody that I probably, again, if you're playing a little safer, I think Suchek makes more sense. But if you really have the same budget, right, why not go for somebody like a Benrahma who can explode on the West Ham scene, right? He's had a good preseason. I know there's a lot of bias, a lot of Twitter bias if you follow Twitter, right? There's a lot of Twitter bias in terms of how well he can do, and there are a lot of question marks, of course, because he was there in West Ham last season as well, right? And he didn't really, his overall numbers were still okay, but I think he didn't get a lot of attacking returns from an FPL perspective. So I think there's a good chance that you can take that risk. Again, 6 million is not really a price range where you'll call it very risky, right? Like, of course, going for a Mane instead of Salah is probably more riskier than these kind of moves. So I think you maybe can go for somebody like a Benrahma, who's had a great preseason. Suchek. So look at this. Look at it from this way, right? Suchek will give you a lot of goal threat in terms of set pieces, whereas Benrahma could really give you a lot of creative and attacking potential from open play, right? And what would you really want to kind of focus towards? Because again, yes, Cresswell has good delivery, and they are one of the better teams to score from those set pieces. But I think if Benrahma really makes that place his own, I think he could have a great season, and he could probably even be a bargain this season. So I think I would probably take that chance and go Benrahma instead of Suchek. Hardik, you're saying can you go for Sterling? Again, I'm not really sure. Sterling might not start. He's not had a preseason. He's not really had any minutes. He had a great Euro, so You could argue that he had some good form behind him, but I generally feel that Sterling might not start, or will probably take a little time to kind of get the groove and come into action. At that price range, in fact, lesser, you can go for somebody like a Son, right? Who's looking a decent option to go for. So I think probably save that additional money, or either you upgrade to somebody like a Bruno or somebody like a Salah if you don't have them, for example. If you already have them, then I probably just save that additional money and then probably just get Son. I think Son, I still rate him highly. Again, I want to see him for a couple of weeks and then kind of understand the Kane situation. But I think in general, I think I would prefer somebody like a Son over Sterling. Fala, is Toney a good option? Again, I've kind of mentioned this. If you're afraid of ownership and if you feel that he's gonna blast off, you can go for him. But again, you can play an alternate strategy as well, where you go for three different attackers. Let's say somebody like a Wilson, Antonio, or Ings, or you go with two attackers like I have, and have a different strategy in place. That's absolutely fine. It totally depends on what you kind of consider, right? Whether you consider your midfielders to outscore Toney. I generally feel that that could happen. So that's why I have this particular strategy where I've not really gone for him. I'm not saying it's a bad option. I generally think that I would want to see Toney a bit more. And considering they're a championship team and they're playing in the Premier League for the first time ahead of fans, in front of fans, etc., all of that thing is there. And Premier League is a big step up, right? So you'd never really know how that really goes. So I think I'll probably wait up on Toney. Bundia plus Antonio or Benrahma plus Ings. I think I really like the second option. I know it's a little riskier. Bundia plus Antonio is probably a little safer, to be very honest. I think Ings is slightly more owned. But I think with Ings, of course, you have that. So ultimately, you still have to make that transfer, right? In case if you are planning to shift your Aston Villa players from Game Week 4, I think Bundia or whether it's Ings, I think you still get rid of them in Game Week 4. I think overall, Ings definitely will be, starting all games. If he's fit, he's gonna start all games. Watkins, a lot of speculation around, where is he gonna play? Whether he's gonna play on the left, whether he's gonna, play as a second striker. So there's all of that conversation, but I generally feel that Ings is gonna do really well at Villa. Plus, I'm really hoping Benrahma does well too, and there's a good chance that he can play that Lingard role. He can get those attacking returns. So I think it looks more of an explosive combo, right? And personally a manager. I'm personally an FPL player who likes taking a few risks. Again, I'm not saying Benrahma is a huge risk considering he's only 6 million and you can easily replace him with somebody else, or probably get zero point 0.5 or even a million, and then you can get the likes of Harvey Barnes. You can get the likes of at 6.5 you can get the likes of Rafinha as well. So overall, I think Benrahma plus Ings looks more explosive. But if you probably want to go a bit safer, I think Bundia plus Antonio. I think he's fit to start this game as well. So I think there's a good chance that he gets majority minutes. He still might not last for the whole 90, but I think there's still a good chance that he gets gets decent minutes in that game. Safer would be Bundia plus Antonio. Digne DCL, I think I've playing 11. I've high, and I've already kind of mentioned this. Considering what all has happened in Everton's preseason with the whole COVID situation, I think there's a good chance that I probably would avoid them, and I probably don't go with them initially. I would probably want to see how Benitez is playing with the whole squad, how he's managing the whole squad, how fit is DCL. I'm not really sure how fit he is because he's not really had any minutes in terms of preseason, right? I still don't feel he's going to be match fit, right? So I would probably avoid that combination right away. I know Everton have really good fixtures, and you would probably make that case that they have good fixtures. Probably target those fixtures, and this combination is gonna be really good. It could be, it definitely could be, but I still feel I probably won't go there. At 5.5, you have the likes of Shaw. Stones might not start game week 1, but I think Stones is also going to be a decent option. I think he starts ahead of Laporte as well, assuming that Laporte stays at the club. So there are options there. In the 8 million bracket as well, you have some decent options. So I think you can avoid this for now. Yeah. How about Gray from Everton instead of Benrahma? Again, Gray could play, assuming that Richarlison was not playing, or probably even DCL was not playing. Gray definitely played in one. I think he played. He definitely played in preseason, as what of what I remember. But I think again with Gray and Everton as a whole, I think it's probably better to just wait it out. See for a couple of weeks what's happening in the club. What kind of players are getting affected. How is training gonna get affected? There's a lot of these different situations that can arise because of COVID, right? And we saw that last season. So I think considering all of that, I think it's fine to avoid Everton players altogether. Yeah. So we'll take up the next one. Would you rather play Benrama or Tony? I think I would play Benrama. I've kind of covered that enough. Do you think Chilwell will play? I think he can play. Alonso played. I think yeah. Alonso only played. Was it 120 minutes? I think it was 120 minutes. So yeah, I think he played the whole game. Chilwell good enough to start. After that, the fixtures get tricky. At that price point, you can get somebody like a Diaz as well, who's definitely nailed in terms of City's backline. I don't think so. There's going to be rotation early on, especially early on in the season. When we go a little deeper in terms of cup competitions or Champions League, I think that can be one situation or scenario where you can get a lot of rotation. But I think in general, Diaz looks like the most nailed from a City perspective. So if you really want to go at that price point, I think I would probably go with Diaz. But I think yeah, Chilwell would play. Could even start the next coming games. It's a risk, to be very honest. I'm like there's a chance that he plays, probably a 60-40 chance that he plays. So I'm not really very very confident there. Anything about Jota, Eric? I've kind of mentioned Jota as well in a bit detail. Uh, I personally don't think that he's starting beyond game week 2. There's He's definitely not starting game week 3. I think the Chelsea game, they're not gonna be that open. I think they're gonna start with Firmino up top, who can give them a lot in terms of pressing and his movement and his work without the ball. So I think that also is really important. So I think with Jota, it's a bit tricky. I don't think so. He's a long term. He could be a long term option if he starts getting more minutes. But I think I would say that Greenwood would get more minutes. And I think there's a good chance that Greenwood probably even outscores him. Right? There's a good chance that Jota could get something from the bench. But in general, I feel you know that I think Jota could be avoided. You can go for other players. You can go for other picks in that price range. I think there are some decent options in that 7.5 million price range. So I would probably avoid Jota, which I have in my squad. We take up the next one. Nicolas Pepe, a good option. I think he's a good differential option. Then Arsenal have a couple of difficult games. So assuming that you have a plan for him, you're probably replacing him, getting somebody like a Barnes, or again probably a 6 million midfielder or someone like that. So that could be an option, but yeah, I think for game week 1 could be decent considering again there's a thing as well, right? Like with the likes of Oba and Lacazette out, will Arsenal really be that potent in attack? Will they be really good in attack? There's a lot of speculation around that as well, right? So uh, yeah, again, I'm not very very confident. I think overall he'll do well. I think he'll have a good season, but I think in general, I personally don't like him for that game week 1 fixture. I think though Brentford again a championship team and Arsenal can score a couple of goals, but in general I think there are better options. Jota or Pepe, I think I'll avoid both, Eric, to be very honest. Uh, I'll try to avoid both options, but in case if I really have to choose one, I think for the start, Jota could be the one to go for. He might come off the bench and play some minutes, and we've all seen that he can do well from the bench as well. Again, not very very hopeful and very very confident on that, but I think in general, I think I would probably go with Jota. Greenwood, Jota, definitely Greenwood. Varun has to be Greenwood. More nailed, I think, in terms of both players might get more minutes considering what the situation is at United. So I think definitely Greenwood. Ings or Wilson? I think Ings for the first 3 games. Then probably you get him somebody like a Jimenez or probably move to him Wilson. If you're looking at a long term pick, maybe Wilson. But again, do you really expect Newcastle to bang goals in every game? Yes, Willock has come back and he's going to start mostly. I don't think he's going to start in game week 1, but I think he might play in game week 2. So looking from that perspective, I think Wilson is a better shout. But if you're looking to only target the first three fixtures, I think Ings is the better player to go for. And if you have a plan, for removing Ings or replacing Ings with somebody else, so I think, long term, probably little long term is Wilson, short term would be Ings. Greenwood Mount, Harish, I think I would go with Greenwood. I don't think Mount would be an option for me till game week 7, where their fixtures, get a little easier. Thoughts on Toney? I've kind of mentioned it. If you were playing safe, go for him. If you are afraid of his returns or he might really explode the scene, or if you're not confident in your midfield, if you feel that your midfield is not going to give you more points than Toney, then I think go with Toney. Otherwise, invest in that fifth midfielder. I think that's really crucial. Amati for taking. Satyan, you're saying why not Amati for taking? Considering Leeds don't keep many clean sheets, I think Amati again. So I'm not really looking for only one game week, right? I generally don't play FPL like that. I generally don't just plan every week on week, and and start making a lot of transfers. Uh, there's only a longer plan involved. I don't think Amati is going to be a long term option after probably game week 2. Maybe he might not be an option in game week 2, right? So I'm essentially just getting him for a week. I think Simikas also probably would be for a couple of weeks, but I like Simikas more than Amati. And I think I don't really want to keep 4 million defenders on my bench. I think that's a very important consideration. Like, a lot of people are not really considering him. Um, so yeah, it's difficult. I think Ailing would be better suited in terms of his, attacking returns. He's more of a long-term option, especially the likes of Ailing. Probably I might even get. I'm not sure right now, but might even get White. Might replace White with somebody like a Weltman. I'm not doing. I don't think so. I'm doing it right now. But I think for a lot of people that could be a decent combination as well. So I think because of the attacking threat, I think Amati doesn't really cut out for me. I know I had him in my team, but considering that I will have 4 million bench options, and if something goes wrong, or they might not even start. Let's say we are all surprised when Westergaard starts, right? So I won't probably take that chance. Start Toney, Rafinha, or White this game week. I think I would start. Interesting. I think I would start Rafi. Yeah, I think I would start Rafinha. I think there's a decent chance that Leeds can score against Man United. I think Rafinha is really important for the Leeds setup. I think from an attacking perspective, we can't really question Leeds a lot, right? And even in the games last year in the last season, I think Rafinha did pretty well. So I think good chance that he does well again, and probably I would go with Rafinha if I really have to go. I don't think so. The Arsenal Brentford game is not going to be a 0-0 or maybe even a clean sheet for one team. I think both teams are going to concede. Uh, I generally feel that Toney could score. Yes, there's a good chance there as well. But I think I would probably prefer Rafinha, just because of how the flair that he possesses, and the kind of things that he can do on the pitch. Not really seen too much of Toney, so not really completely ignoring him, but probably just waiting for a couple of weeks to kind of assess and understand how he's doing. Why not Amati? I think I've kind of mentioned that. I didn't want to save 0.5. It's okay not saving 0.5. It's absolutely fine. You don't really have to save 0.5. I know it gives you a little bit flexibility, but as I said, I don't want to have two, defenders, or probably two defenders which are 4 million, right? So because if I'm not playing both, let's say I'm playing Simikas in this scenario, but if I had somebody else who I was not playing, and if someone of my starting 11 gets injured in training or something happens, right? Might not have a good cover, considering that I all have Scarlett in as as a forward option. So I think that's my reason of not going with Amati. I really want to have two players at least on the bench, or at max, who can give me at least a couple of points if my main players don't play. I think that's my strategy there. Bundia and Wilson, or Toney or Greenwood. I think I would go with Bundia and Wilson. Luke, I think yeah, it's a more differential option. I think with Toney, if not having Toney, you're going against the crowd. So if you're playing safe, then probably Toney and Greenwood. But if you are okay taking that bit of a risk, Wilson could be a very canny pick, to be very honest, right? So he could do really well at the start if he's fit. I think he's fit, and he could get you decent points. I think for me, I think I generally like to go for slightly differential players and take a slight risk to get ahead of the curve. Because if the likes of Bundia or Wilson really hit it off, right, you'll see a lot of price rises and all of that stuff also going on. So to kind of avoid all of those things, I think Bundia Wilson could be a decent option. Um, yeah, I think instead of Benrama, again, looking at short term, maybe yes, Bundia could be a slightly better pick. But Benrama, if he's nailed and if he gets more minutes, I think he's gonna do equally well or maybe even better than the likes of Bundia. The fixtures for Villa are a little tough after game week 3, so I think that is when you probably want to not have him or transfer him out or have a different player instead, right? So considering that, I think you know it's okay having Bundia in the shorter term and then probably shifting him to Benrama. If you're looking to probably stick with this player and keep him, I think Benrama is also a good shout. I think he's gonna get a lot of minutes this season, and I think he could be a good option for West Ham. So yeah. Um, Ings, Martial, DCL. Looking at the first 6 game weeks, mostly, I think I would probably go again. Ings, first 3 weeks is pretty good. Martial, are you really sure that he's gonna play majority minutes? Yes, he might get more minutes, considering that Cavani might not be fit a lot of times. But can we really trust Martial? I don't think so. DCL, he's Everton's main man for sure. Again, how Everton can do and what they will do, I'm not really very sure about that right now, because you have the likes of Rodriguez, you have some other players as well who are COVID infected, right? And they're affected by that whole COVID scenario. So that becomes a little trickier. But if I really have to select one out of these three, for the first 6 weeks, I would still go for someone like an Ings. I know, I've said it enough that Aston Villa have tricky fixtures, but still, I think Ings has the capability to score against any team, right? We've seen him scoring against the likes of Liverpool. We've seen him scoring against the likes of Chelsea as well. So he is a big match or a big game player. We've seen that, right? And his finishing is pretty good. So if they can get some decent service as well, I think you can still play him for 4 to 5 weeks. In case if you feel that you probably don't want to take that chance and you feel that Aston Villa is not gonna as probably just gonna tank, right? Then I think I would still go with DCL. I would not go with Martial. I think Martial is I'm a United fan. I'm wearing a United jersey, right? But I still feel Martial is probably not someone that we look at from an FPL perspective. I really don't trust him from an FPL perspective. Michael, thank you so much. I hope it's a good team after game week 1 and after the score that we get in game week 1. So let's hope that. Fingers crossed. Playing 11, yeah, playing is the same. I just have Havertz. Havertz risky, might not start. He played a lot of minutes. I think 120 minutes. He played the whole game in the Super Cup, so he might not start. And after that, the fixtures are tricky, so I might not want to go with Havertz myself. I think that's the thinking there that I had. I'll probably take a chance with somebody like a Mahrez if you can afford him, or probably get a little back, probably save that point 0.5 million and get somebody like a Grealish. I think Grealish could also be a decent option. I think a lot of people have him in their teams, but some people are still like, kind of not sure whether he's going to start, what role etc is he going to play, and all that stuff. But I think yeah, Havertz would be a risky one. I think Mahrez is going to start game week 1 for sure. Might even start a couple of game weeks after the international break. I'm not really sure. um so yeah, but in general, I think he's gonna start. Michael, what's my bench? I think yeah, so it's Steel, White, Ailing, and Scarlet. That's my bench. I have a couple of 4.5 million defenders and a cheap striker, so I don't really plan to use that striker spot. I'm generally gonna play a 3-5-2 for majority, at least at the start. Probably till the time I get Lukaku in, or I get my wild card in. I'm gonna start with this particular team. Yeah, so we'll move on to the next one. Saka for the Brentford fixture. I think he's a decent option, assuming that he starts and plays majority of the game. I know there's a lot of injuries already happening, but considering what's happened in the preseason, etc., and he's obviously had a longer time playing for the Euros as well. There's a slight risk that he might not start, but again, with the injury problems, there could be a chance that he starts. Could be a decent option as well, but make sure that you have a plan for him in the next couple of weeks. Havertz game week 1, then to Mahrez. I don't think so. I personally don't think so. Havertz is going to start. So probably you could just have Mahrez directly. I think Mahrez could do well against Spurs as well. Sinan bench boost. Again, that's a good thought to probably give it in terms of bench boost. The kind of, if you have the likes of Simikas, if you have the likes of Amarty, etc. But I personally feel I would wait for using the bench boost. I know it's a tricky chip to play. And you could obviously make a case in terms of playing the bench boost early on and getting rid of the chip. But I think I would still want to play it in a double game week, or in a week where I can really get decent options. I'm still not very confident in terms of Amati and Simikas and these players, right? Yes, we've got a couple of gifts here, but I still feel that we can save it and play it later. Grealish or Greenwood? I think I'll go with Greenwood. Uh, Bench boost I've kind of already mentioned. What about City defense? Diaz. I think Varun Diaz is the one to go for. If you are looking at City defenders, I think Diaz has to be the one to go for, right? Stones might not play game week one, as he didn't have a preseason of any sort. But I think in general, Diaz has to be the most nailed. Cancelo, etc., could probably give you more points, but I still feel there's a risk of rotation there. I still feel he starts the game week for the first game week, but I still it's a tricky one, right? Like I Diaz would be the one for sure. Brian, would you go for Greenwood or Gundogan? I think I would go, if I really have to go with one, slightly safer would be Gundogan in terms of starts, maybe. But I think in terms of attacking returns, Greenwood could be decent. If I really have to choose one, I'm a risk taker, and I'll probably go with Gundogan. I think without KDB, he could do really well. He could make all those runs that he made last season, and that could really benefit him. He could even play as a false nine, right? I know Torres is probably more nailed to play a false nine, but I think there's a good chance that Gundogan gets something from that Spurs game as well. So I think Gundogan, if you're slightly risky, then probably Gundogan. Jamie, I'll quickly rate your team. Sanchez, Trent, Simicas, Shaw, Ruben Diaz, Fernandez, Salah, Benrahma. I think it's a good team. Yeah, yeah, it's a good team. I think you don't really have to change anything. It's a pretty settled squad. Simicas is somebody that you'll have to probably make a plan for in terms of when Robertson returns. So I think that's probably the only slight concern there. You have the likes of White, Brownhill, Rafinha to kind of cover that easily, but I think it's a pretty solid team. A good job there. Why no Chelsea players? Chelsea, not really sure who's going to start, considering a lot of players played 120 minutes in the Super Cup. Then Chelsea have a lot of tricky fixtures from an attacking point of view as well, from a defensive point of view as well. So I think I would probably want to avoid Chelsea, especially with Lukaku now coming in. I'm not really sure how Tuchel's going to line up Lukaku. Whether Havertz is gonna play in the hole, whether probably he plays out left. I think Werner is probably the one who plays wide. But I think in general, I would want to see Chelsea for a couple of games and then take that call. Gundogan, Diaz, I think for the attacking upside, I would want to go with Gundogan. I'm always somebody who's probably taking a bit of a risk and trying to go for those attacking minded players or even attacking minded defenders, right? So I probably would go with Gundogan. Can you pick two between Benrahma, Bundia, and Rafinha? I think I would go with Benrahma and Bundia for the first week, and I'll start with these two. Yeah, definitely these two. That's why I don't have Rafinha in my team. Gundogan most nailed in the Man City lineup. I think so. I think he is probably one of the most nailed players right now. Yes, Mahrez is there. He's had a good preseason. Of course, we also saw that Gundogan also had a good preseason. So I think there's a good chance that both these guys start, and both probably for the first couple of weeks. I think they are the most nailed players. We might see KDB coming in game week 3 or game week 4, something around that. So then things might get a bit tricky with Grealish also coming in. Let's say if Silva doesn't leave, then there's that threat as well, whether he's gonna start, what position will he play and all of that stuff. But I think for the first 2-3 weeks, I know it's a very short term, or the time frame is very short, but I generally feel that Gundogan could be starting, and there's a good chance that he can get something, especially without KDB, right? So yeah, I think that could be a decent pick in my opinion. Great guys, I think we've reached the deadline. That went by quite fast. I hope I was able to help you guys. Thank you so much for joining the stream. It's the first stream of the season, of course. There's a lot to look forward to. We'll be doing a lot of content on YouTube. We'll be doing different types of stuff, differentials, captain picks. We have these regular team videos that we do week on week. Of course, we'll have deadline streams. We'll have 38 deadline streams for you guys as well. So there'll be a lot of discussion. There'll be a lot of conversations that will happen across the season. And I'm really, really excited. As a United fan, I am also excited. A lot of new stuff is happening. A couple of players have kind of come in, and there's a lot of positivity around, Premier League this season. Of course, we've had a crazy transfer window so far. And we've not even spoken about the likes of Messi. We've not even spoken about the likes of PSG going, all crazy in terms of transfers, etc. But I think it's going to be a great season. Really looking forward to it. I really hope that you guys have a great season. Make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, guys. Really, really important. You'll get access to all that good stuff that we do. You'll get to know all the good videos, etc. When as and when they come out. So make sure that you hit the notification bell as well, and that'll be really awesome. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter as well. We do a lot of stuff on these social media handles there. There's a lot of daily stuff that goes out. Of course, there are a lot of stories. There's a lot of updates in terms of player injuries, about the different happenings in Premier League as a whole. So I think that should really interest you. In general as well, you can join the mini league. I've already mentioned there are some prizes etc. to be won there as well. So make sure you join the mini league. This year is going to be really, really competitive, and we have a lot of lots and lots of prizes there. So make sure you check out our post regarding this as well. I think that'll help you understand what I'm talking about here, right? Great. Eric, you're saying that you've made a last minute change from Matt Target and so on. I think it's a decent change. I really don't consider the Villa defense too highly, to be very honest. I know that some people have really spoken about Aston Villa players or Aston Villa defenders for the first couple of games or 3 games, but I think that's a decent move. I think Trent plus Pepe. Pepe could be good for game week 1. Not really sure about what happens to him. In game week 2, 3 when the fixtures get a bit tricky. In general, I'm really very positive and very hopeful that Pepe and Arsenal, right? Like I'm not an Arsenal fan, but I really feel bad for the club, man. Like I really want them to do well, and come on, like Arsenal is still a big club, right? So you would want the big clubs to be there and kind of compete at the biggest level. So really hoping that Pepe does well. Martinelli, the likes of Martinelli, Saka, Emil Smith, they have a lot of youngsters, right? And it'll be very interesting to see how they kind of fit in, and if Lacazette and the likes of Aubameyang are kind of phased out from the team now, considering that they have a very young team. Um, Rishikesh, which team do you think? I don't really think I have to answer that. Like, look at Man City, man. Look at what they're doing. Look at what they're doing, and look at this kind of signings that they're doing. Let's say if they get Kane, if they get the likes of they've already got Grealish, but let's say if they get Kane as well, I think it's gonna be. Why are we even watching? Again, I agree that we've kind of United has also kind of gotten a couple of decent players, but there's a lot that needs to change from our club perspective as well. We see the likes of Arsenal, we see the likes of Liverpool not really signing, a lot of players. They have signed a couple of players to mitigate the small problems or the bigger problems. In fact, the immediate problems I would say in the club. But I think in general, it's Man City spending crazy amount of money. And of course, still not winning a Champions League. So sorry, any Man City fan here, they've still not won the Champions League. So that's so yeah. So it's gonna be interesting. I think City still looks like the most complete side. I think they have a very good squad. They have a good depth. They can easily play a lot of different players. They can play a lot of different systems as well, right? United, the likes of United, Liverpool, Arsenal, they have a specific system and they have a specific style of play. I think with Pep, it's generally difficult to kind of assess whether he's going to play a false nine. If they have Kane, of course, Kane is not going to play a false nine. Yes, he tries to come a little deeper, or he used to, especially in the last season. But I don't think so. He's going to play. He's going to play as an outright striker, as an outright forward, right? So there could be different systems employed there as well if Kane kind of comes in. So that's going to be really interesting. I think. But I still think, yeah, Man City is probably the strongest team on paper. Um, let's hope so that happens. Just kidding. Let's see. I think Ben Rama. I'm really hoping and I'm really excited about Ben Rama. Of course, there's a lot of Twitter, influence in that as well. But I think let's see. Tony is also somebody that I am really excited about. I'm not sure how the championship side is going to really fare in the Premier League, because preseason is fine, right? You really can't. You can understand players' fitness. You can understand systems. You can understand what kind of players are coming in, etc. But you really can't say that if a team has done really well in preseason, they will also do well in the Premier League or in the league, right? Because the difficulty level kind of increases multiple folds, and it becomes a little tricky. So let's see. I think it's going to be interesting. A lot of good options, a lot of new players kind of coming in, and I think it's going to be a one hell of a season. Um, Breno, you're asking, do you think that 0.5 million in the bank is enough to survive through FPL? uh, Again, so yes, you need some money to kind of, go through or mitigate any kind of losses or any kind of injuries or any kind of moves that you've made and they've not really worked, and you need to probably upgrade certain players and all of that stuff. Last season, what I felt, I think, having I a lot of times last season, like, of course, last season was a little different in terms of how the season panned out. It was probably a little bit on the one-off side where you won't see that kind of a season every time. But I think in general, what I felt that having somewhere around, let's say, zero point 0.5 to a million, I think is something that you can try to have. Of course, a lot of it depends on the player values as well, right? On your team value as well. What kind of players you're having in, when are you selling those players, when are you taking advantage of those price rises, when are you taking advantage of those price falls, when you sell a player before a price fall and all of that stuff, right? But I think, yeah, having something around a million, less than a million, I think 0.5 to a million, I think, which you can easily have, right? If you have good team value, I think it's pretty easy to kind of have that. So yeah, I think that could help you survive this season. So yeah. Um, Thoughts on Lukaku, Praveen? Yeah, I think, no, I think, to be very honest, because he's Lukaku, a lot of people are gonna try to tear apart their teams and try to kind of have him, because he's a known pedigree, right? So he's done really well wherever he's gone. Of course, at United now, out of all the clubs, it had to be United, right? At United, he struggled, and we were not able to take advantage of Lukaku in the fullest. So that's on us. But in general, I think a lot of people are going to go for him, especially from game week 7, because Chelsea has a really good run that time, right? And you probably would be kind of preparing towards that, because then you have these fixture swings where where Man United get tricky fixtures, and you probably would want to sell United assets. You might even want to downgrade somebody like a Bruno Fernandes, and probably get some other players. Probably even get a Chelsea's cheaper, let's say like a Havertz if he's doing really well, or probably Pulisic or somebody like that, right? So I think a lot of people will go for Lukaku because, of course, he's Lukaku. He's done really well in the league. But I think the price range is a bit itchy to me. Like, probably if he was somewhere around 10.5 to 11, I think that would have been a great price for somebody like a Lukaku. And I think that switch from somebody like a Vardy to a Lukaku would have been a lot easier, right? So I think, but I still feel that a lot of people are going for him. I think his ownership is probably already over 10%. If the last time I checked, I think it was more than 10%, roughly around 10%. So I still feel, I think, from till about game week 7, it might be a little lower. But from game week 7, I think it's gonna shoot up like crazy. I think because he's gonna do well. Like, whatever system I think Tuchel plays, and he's gonna be the main man, right? They have got a lot of chances last season. They did underperform their numbers by a great extent, right? We all know that. We all know what kind of misses Werner did, and what kind of, I really feel for Chelsea fans there. But yeah, as a United fan, I can probably enjoy. But I think in general, Lukaku is probably that missing piece that they were looking for, and he's an out and out attacker and a striker, and I think he's gonna do well. But yeah, I think a lot of people will get him in their teams. Um, we've not read much on Kane. Yeah, I think, will City sign him? It's so it's weird, right? You really don't know what's happening there, because whatever I read, City is ready to play 140 million. There are talks of 160 million plus different add-ons and all of that stuff. There was a conversation where there was 100, I think 120, something around that, plus a few players as well. So there are all of these conversations happening from City's end, and they're saying that they are okay if Tottenham are in business, and if they're okay dealing in terms of this particular player and the transfer, they are okay with it. But there hasn't been anything that has kind of come from Tottenham. Yes, I've read articles where they've mentioned that Danny Levy's he's fine with Kane leaving, and he's okay if a club submits an offer and all of that stuff. But I really don't know what's really happening there. I As a rival club, I think I really hope that doesn't happen. But yeah, there's this chance that Kane might go all rogue. He might not. He wants to leave, right? And I don't really see any point of keeping Kane in Tottenham. Yes, Son has agreed to a long term contract, and he's probably going to be their main man anyways. But I really feel, I think they should let Kane go. I think something like Aston Villa that they're doing, right? Aston Villa got rid of Grealish, and then they have, of course, the different club philosophies, and you have different personals, you have different officials, and all of that stuff. But I think what Aston Villa is doing is pretty great, right? They're trying to it's something like Moneyball, right? So they're trying to replace the likes of Grealish with three or four different players. Again, whether that'll work, whether they can get that attacking threat, whether they can get those two or three different players who can complete a Grealish, maybe not. But I think they should let Kane go, right? Like, and City, of course, they also need a striker. So if something of that sort happens, they will definitely push to sign him. So I think that could happen. That could still happen. There's still some time to go, right, for the window to close. So I think that could still happen. Um, any pre-planned strategy for wildcard, bench boost, or free hit? Again, right now it's too early to kind of talk about the free hit or the bench boost. I think wildcard is something that will really depend on what we do, or what our teams are, or my team is, or probably your team is, uh, after the international break. I think that is when a lot of people, a lot of players start getting a sense. Oh my God, what the hell have I done with my team, right? And I think that is where you kind of get a sense that now this needs to be fixed. I think enough is enough. We've had enough, or I have had enough, and I probably need to change that, right? So that could be one time where you really think, probably game week 4 is one time where you actually think that uh, probably this is a good time to play the wild card, and get somebody, get better players, or get a better balance, right? Because you would have been struggling because of a good balance as well. So that could be one option. Game week 7 could be an option as well, where Chelsea and United have their fixtures turning, right? That could be a decent option. I think it's still pretty late in terms of when people play the wildcard. I think generally it's about game week 3 or 4, when people know that they've made mistakes, and they've really messed up their squads, and they start then getting all panicky, and then start worrying about the players, and then they push that button sometimes too soon as well, right? So I think it's better to hold it for as long as possible. But I think it's let's see. I think it totally depends on what kind of a shape your squad is in, right? So in terms of bench boost, free hit, I think it's a bit too early. Again, free hit generally was used last time in I think last season, when there were very few fixtures, or there were probably a lot of double game weeks. Again, what kind of double game weeks we get? There will be double game weeks for sure, right? They might be a little lesser, considering, let's assume and let's really hope that that whole COVID scenario kind of gets fixed or gets sorted by then. But I think that's a decent time to play these chips, right? Even bench boost, if you have like a 15-player team playing a couple of fixtures, I think that's an ideal scenario that you can have for a bench boost. I think you still have certain fixtures, or you still have certain weeks where you have standout fixtures, and you probably have somebody on your bench who can get good points. So you can even target those kind of fixtures. But I think in general, I think it's a bit too early for the bench boost or the free hit. You failed miserably at taking United players because 3 games in a week. Yeah, that was a weird one. Yeah, I know that was a pretty weird one. I think a lot of us suffered there. So, but yeah, let's see. I think this season is going to be a bit different. So yeah, the strategy etc. might also change. Of course, we'll be coming up with different drafts, different ideas, different strategies etc. to help you guys. So I think that's really going to be really helpful in terms of going forward. Breno, thank you for the sub. Really appreciated. Let's get more subscribers in, and it's gonna be awesome, guys. Rishikesh, between last year, by the way, sorry, last year I had some very good weeks. Thank you so much for that. I really hope, and I really hope that I can help you this year as well. So yeah, let's see. Being a United fan, I think. Yeah, Shubham, I really don't know whether I can relate to that or not. But yeah, like, I don't know. I still like Kane, man. Like, let's see what happens. I definitely don't want him to go to City, but yeah. Rabi, thank you so much. I know there are a lot of 50-50. In fact, one thing that I really learned last year as well was me also learning, right? I'm not somebody who's played it for like 15 years or when the game launched. So I also learned a lot of things in terms of how you can approach these 50-50 decisions, what kind of moves to make, and all of that good stuff. So I think all of us are learning together. It's a great it's great to be connected through such a community where you can share your ideas, share your thoughts, and all of that good stuff. So I think that really helps. So yeah, really looking forward to a good season, man. Yeah, let's see, Chinmay. Let's see. Brentford. I'm dreading Brentford and not having Tony. Let's see. Let's see. Great. I think, guys, that'll be it for this stream. Thank you so much for joining. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you guys. Really had a great time. Really had a lot of fun. I really hope you join us for the next streams as well. Make sure you hit subscribe, guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Really important. Please like the stream as well if you liked what you saw today and if you liked the conversations that we had. Looking forward to a lot of great stuff and great content. I'll see you around. Always feel free to DM me and catch up for a conversation if you want to talk football. I think it's generally a lot of fun, right? With that, I think we'll end it. I'll see you in Saners next time, and have a great week. Bye bye.